समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
The recent visit of Australian Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister Richard Marles to New Delhi has provided a boost to developing ties between India and Australia. This diplomatic outreach underscores Australia's unwavering support for India in its battle against terrorism in all its manifestations. Notably, Marles's visit comes shortly after the Albanese administration's re-election, marking an early and decisive engagement with India at a time of heightened global uncertainty, unending theatrics from the White House, etc. Now, if you reflect on the trajectory of India-Australia relations, you'd be surprised how remarkably far the partnership has come in a relatively short period. Just a decade ago, Australia was not even a prominent feature in India's strategic imaginations. However, shifting geopolitical dynamics have brought the two nations together. The year 2025, which is this year, marks the 5th anniversary of the elevation of our bilateral ties from a strategic partnership to what is known as a comprehensive strategic partnership, placing Australia among a select group of countries with whom India maintains a 360-degree engagement framework. So this enhanced partnership encompasses multiple overlapping mechanisms, including the 2+2 dialogue for high-level coordination on defense and foreign affairs, intergovernmental consultations, and a free trade agreement as well. These initiatives reflect a shared commitment to deepening cooperation across various sectors, from security to trade as well as technology. But let's take a look at the critical driver of this relationship. At the heart of this evolving relationship lies a mutual recognition of the importance of defense and security collaboration. During Marles's visit, both nations welcomed the signing of the Australia-India Joint Research Project and agreed to intensify and diversify defense industry collaboration. The upcoming third India-Australia 2+2 ministerial later this year is expected to further advance defense science and technology cooperation, enhancing interoperability and addressing common security challenges. Beyond bilateral engagements, both countries are active participants in the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or the Quad, which is an informal grouping that includes the United States and Japan. The inclusion of Australia in the Malabar naval exercises alongside India, Japan, and the US has further built interoperability and trust. Now, it is true that the Quad stands as the most prominent example of the plurilateral cooperation linking the United States and India with two of their closest strategic partners. Yet, America's current relationship with India has lost the sheen it was expected to have. Now, while Washington has not formally withdrawn from anything, from key security alliances such as NATO or informal groupings such as Quad, it is the Trump administration's flippy-floppy and inconsistent foreign policy towards especially its allies and partners that has really irked everybody. Trump's semi-betrayal of Europe on Ukraine has unsettled allies around the globe, including Australia and New Zealand, because both of those are formal defense partners to the US. As the US-China rivalry develops, regional states are scrambling to protect their interests. And why not? There is little clarity on how Western powers might respond to a potential Chinese military takeover of Taiwan. A direct military confrontation between the United States and China remains improbable. And this reality has been acknowledged both overtly and implicitly by voices within and outside the US administration. For Indo Pacific nations caught in the geopolitical crossfire, being reliant on China for trade and being reliant on the US for security, investing in their own strategic resilience appears to be the most prudent way forward. So the argument I'm making is that India and Australia will have to look beyond the Quad. Global military spending surged by 9.4% in 2024, and this has been the steepest increase since the Cold War ended. Driven by the return of attritional warfare and China's growing maritime assertiveness, there is little choice. In Australia, this has reignited calls to overhaul defense capabilities. The urgency was echoed, although abrasively, by US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth at the recently held Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, where he was lamenting America's kindness and overgenerosity and said everybody's taking America for a ride. And yet, amid the unpredictability of leaders like Donald Trump and the transactional nature of US foreign policy, countries in the region are pursuing resilience. And here, there are many more conversations that New Delhi and Canberra can have and must have. To refine the discourse around building resilience in the Indo Pacific, what I just mentioned, 3 critical questions must be addressed. First, how does China factor shape India-Australia cooperation? Second, how do these shared concerns influence their bilateral and multilateral responses? And third, are there any missing links that, if bridged, could yield a more resilient and coordinated response to today's complex geopolitical disruptions? Now let's answer them one by one. First, China's strategic posture manifests differently for India and Australia. For India, the primary threat is terrestrial. We have a long, contested 3,400-kilometer border, and that remains a constant source of friction and a challenge to regional stability. Now, alongside this, India also competes with China for leadership of the loosely termed Global South. While India holds substantial diplomatic clout and credibility, China leverages overwhelming financial muscle, period. In contrast, it is the maritime domain where New Delhi and Canberra find significant convergence. India faces encirclement through Beijing's string of pearls, which is strategic investments in ports across the Indian Ocean. Similarly, Australia confronts Chinese influence through its growing presence in the South Pacific. Chinese capital has deeply penetrated this region, bringing Beijing uncomfortably close to Australia's maritime borders. And in fact, here, let me tell you about an incident that has really worried the Australians. In February this year, this proximity turned provocative. Proximity in the sense that the Chinese getting too close to Australian borders. That turned provocative when a group of Chinese warships sailed into waters very close to Australia. And this marked a significant escalation and showed China's blue water naval capabilities. Now, this incursion triggered a heightened alert across Australia's defence establishment. The Royal Australian Navy responded with immediate readiness measures. And what did they do? They deployed vessels like the HMAS Hobart for anti-submarine operations, equipped with an array of SAM missiles, which are surface-to-air missiles, and advanced warfare systems. But it also highlighted a stark reality. Australia remains heavily reliant on the US for security, and its defense capacity falls short of China's rapidly expanding military under Xi Jinping. And here, let me spend a minute to explain to you that for understanding China, it requires acknowledging its distinct conception of warfare. For the Chinese Communist Party, war ends with kinetic battles, but doesn't really begin there. Warfare is a continuum that begins with psychological manipulation, elite capture, and economic lure, and then coercion. This strategic ambiguity, combining symbolic aggression with soft power incentives, has allowed, or rather has enabled China to build relationships across the world, including in Australia's near abroad. From security agreements with the Solomon Islands and Samoa to expanding influence in Tonga, Fiji, and the Cook Islands, China has entrenched itself in regions historically viewed as within Australia's strategic domain. Now, we are no stranger to this attitude by the Chinese, because India is familiar with these tactics, both on our borders and in the Indian Ocean. While Australia has evolved from the Sinophilic era of Kevin Rudd to a more assertive and clear-eyed view of Chinese ambitions, the need now is to go beyond reactive defense postures. Secondly, responses from both India and Australia fall into two categories. One is individual capacity building, which is increased defense expenditures, more defense spending, and aspiring for niche tech. You may be knowing that Australia is trying to gain the submarines under the AUKUS deal. And the second is from plurilateral frameworks with like-minded partners. However, a deeper concern looms. While most strategic conversations focus on the possibility of a Chinese military move on Taiwan, and by extension, potential flashpoints involving Japan's disputed Senkaku Islands, it is the immediate and ongoing threat that is more insidious. And what do I mean here is the hybrid warfare. Cyber attacks, disinformation, AI misuse, and critical infrastructure sabotage represent the grey zone where China operates most effectively. A recent Lowy Institute survey revealed that Australians rank cyber attacks as their top national security concern, even above a direct confrontation between US and China. So, is there another way forward in securing the Indo Pacific? And herein, in my opinion, lies the opportunity. Australia could serve as a bridge between European institutional expertise and Indo Pacific realities, and I'm speaking from an Indian perspective. The EU has a tool. It's called Enhancing Security in and with Asia, or SEWA. And SEWA initiative has recently facilitated the Hybrid Intelligence and Policy Analysis, or HIPAA unit in Australia. Now, for the first time, the EU has extended the capabilities of its Hybrid Center of Excellence, which is based in Helsinki, Finland, into the Indo-Pacific, alluding to the fact that the two security theaters are indeed converging. Now, India, with its active engagement in cyber and maritime security partnerships with the EU, as well as with countries like Australia and Japan, is well placed to integrate into this framework. By linking disjointed initiatives and standardizing hybrid threat responses, this cooperation could form the basis of a new and highly functional Quad, comprising the EU, India, Australia, and Japan. And this Quad can complement the other Quad as and when the American worldview stabilizes. Now, with participation from ASEAN and South Pacific partners, this new grouping that I'm talking about could offer collective institutionalized responses to hybrid threats, addressing the most imminent threats today, not simply preparing for a war in the future. So I'll be back to discuss how to calm the choppy waters in the Indo-Pacific. Stay tuned.